There are some places that seem to collect stories. Crater Lake in southern Oregon is one of them. At first glance, it's one of the most beautiful places in North America. A lake of impossibly blue water, surrounded by towering cliffs and forests, sitting inside the collapsed remains of an ancient volcano. It looks peaceful, almost untouched. But beneath the calm surface lies nearly 2,000 feet of water. And around the lake has grown a remarkable collection of legends and mysteries. The Klamath people tell of a great battle between powerful spirits that ended with the destruction of the mountain itself. Later came stories of aircraft disappearing into fog, a double murder, and an ancient tree known as the Old Man of the Lake. Hello, I'm Sarah.
And I'm Toby.
And welcome to the Whispering Woods podcast.
Yeah, the podcast.
I don't know how that came out, but I'm going to go with it. This episode is all about
the Crater Lake.
Yeah, Crater Lake. Very mystical, very much spooky stuff going on. So first of all, we have a new patron.
Kate.
Hi, Kate. Thank you so much for supporting the podcast. We really, really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
If you'd like to support the podcast, you can do so by visiting patreon.com/The Whispering Woods, where we have a number of tiers and you can listen ad-free. For a small monthly fee, you can also listen in advance. We're on Apple Premium too, where for $4.99 a month, you can listen to all episodes ad-free and in advance. Right. I'll get straight into it now. Are you ready for the story?
Yes, I am.
Crater Lake sits in southern Oregon, high in the Cascade Mountains, inside the remains of a destroyed volcano. It's one of the most striking lakes in the world. The water is a deep, almost unreal blue, held inside steep walls of rock, with forest and snow around it for much of the year. There are no rivers flowing into it, and no rivers flowing out. The lake is fed almost entirely by rain and snowmelt, which is part of why the water is so clear. But Crater Lake did not begin as a lake. It began as Mount Mazama. Thousands of years ago, Mount Mazama was a great volcano. Then around 7,700 years ago, it erupted with such force that the mountain collapsed in on itself. What was left behind was a vast caldera, a huge basin where the volcano had once stood. Over centuries, that basin slowly filled with water until it became Crater Lake. So, from the beginning, this was not ordinary water. It was a lake born from destruction. Today, Crater Lake is the deepest lake in the United States, reaching nearly 2,000 feet at its deepest point. That depth gives it part of its atmosphere. Even in daylight, when the surface is calm and blue, there is the knowledge that beneath it is an immense cold space, dropping down into the remains of the volcano. The beauty of the lake is part of the story. So is the unease. Because Crater Lake has never been only a scenic place. Long before it became a national park, the area was known and remembered by native people, especially the Klamath people, whose traditions preserve the story of the mountain's destruction and the creation of the lake. In Klamath tradition, The eruption of Mount Mazama is connected to a great battle between powerful spirits. One of them is usually named as Lelo, associated with the world below. The other is Skell, associated with the world above. In the story, Lelo looks up from the underworld and becomes drawn to a human woman. When he cannot have her, anger and destruction follow. The mountain erupts. Fire, ash, and darkness cover the land. Then Skell battles Lelo, and Lelo is defeated. In some versions of the story, he's thrown down into the place where the lake now lies. The great mountain is gone. The water fills the hollow, and Crater Lake becomes tied not only to geology, but to a sacred memory of conflict, punishment, and power. This story changes how the lake feels. To tourists, Crater Lake is a place of beauty. To scientists, it is the collapsed remains of a volcano. But in the older tradition, it's also a place marked by spiritual force. It's not just a lake you look at, it's a place with a story beneath it. And many stories around Crater Lake seem to come back to that same idea, that the lake is beautiful, but not passive. It is deep, still, silent, and strangely watchful. It has taken lives. It has wreckage. It has been tied to disappearances, crashes, murder, sacred warnings, and one of the strangest natural oddities in any American lake. A floating figure known as the Old Man of the Lake. But before we get to the Old Man, and before we get to the aircraft wrecks and the deaths that later became attached to this landscape, the starting point is the lake itself. A lake inside a dead volcano. A lake with no ordinary source. A lake so deep that anything lost inside it can seem to vanish completely. And a place where, for generations, people have been warned not to treat the water as just water. Crater Lake's danger is not only in the water, it's also in the landscape around it. The lake sits high in the Cascades, surrounded by ridges, forest, weather, and sudden changes in visibility. Fog and cloud can move through quickly. Snow can close in. The rim can disappear. What looks clear one moment can become difficult to read the next. Some of Crater Lake's darker stories are not about people falling into the lake. They're about people vanishing around it. One of the strongest examples came in December 1945. A group of 7 Grumman Hellcat fighter planes had left Redding, California, heading north towards Washington. The pilots were flying through mountain country, and as they approached the Crater Lake area, the weather became dangerous. Cloud and fog closed around the landscape. In that kind of country, visibility could be everything. A pilot needed to know where the ridges were, where the peaks were, where the ground was rising beneath him. But around Crater Lake, the land does not lie flat and open. It lifts, drops, folds, and disappears into forest and volcanic rock. One of the planes did not make it through. The missing pilot was Ensign Frank Lupo. He was 22 years old. His Hellcat vanished near the park, somewhere around the east side of the lake, close to Skell Head. For the men flying with him, one aircraft had simply disappeared into the cloud and did not come out again. Searches were carried out, but the wreckage was not found. In Frank Lupo's case, it was not days or weeks, it was decades. In this kind of landscape, a plane could go down, and even with people looking for it, even with military attention, even with the urgency of a missing pilot, the forest and the weather could hide the answer for years. In Frank Lupo's case, it was not days or weeks, it was decades. For around 25 years, the crash remained unsolved. The pilot was gone, the plane was gone. The exact end of this flight was not known. Then in 1970, human remains were found in the area. A skull was discovered, and the old disappearance was finally drawn back into the present. The remains were connected to Ensign Frank Lupo. After all those years, Crater Lake had given back a piece of the story, but not all of it. A crash like that leaves a very particular kind of absence. There is the moment the plane disappears from the formation. There is the search that fails. There are the years when the family knows something happened, but not exactly where or how. And then there is the discovery long afterwards, when the landscape finally reveals what it has been holding. Skell Head, near where the plane came down, carries the name of the Sky Spirit, from the Klamath tradition. A modern military aircraft disappearing near that part of the lake is not a supernatural event by itself, but in the wider story of Crater Lake, the names and places begin to feel layered. 30 years after the Hellcat crash, another aircraft disappeared in the Crater Lake region. This time it was not a military flight, it was a small plane carrying 3 people. On 26th of February 1975, a Klamath Falls high school teacher was flying with 2 students when the plane went missing during a snowstorm. The weather that day was bad enough to make the mountains dangerous, and the area around Crater Lake was again difficult country for searchers. The plane did not arrive. Search efforts began, but once again, the landscape did not give up its answer easily. Days passed, then weeks, then years. For the families left behind, that kind of disappearance creates a terrible limbo. There is grief, but not the full certainty of it. There are questions that cannot be answered. Where did the plane come down? Did anyone survive the initial crash? Were they close to help? Had the wreckage been passed unknowingly by searchers, hikers, or hunters? The Crater Lake area is beautiful, but it is not soft country. Snow can hide debris, forest can swallow metal. A ravine, slope, or patch of heavy timber can conceal a crash site for years. And that's what happened. There was also something strange attached to the disappearance of the 1975 flight. On 26th of February, Jean Dunn drove her husband Dave to the airport. He was flying their daughter and grandchild home to Salem in his blue Cessna 182, with 2 17-year-old student pilots, Jim Pryor and Matt Perkins, travelling with him to gain more flying experience. The plane reached Salem safely, and after dropping off Jean's daughter and grandchild, Dave and the 2 students began the return flight to the falls. Jean went home, and feeling cold, went to bed early. At around 9:30 that evening, she suddenly woke with the sensation that someone had placed a hand on her leg. There was no one there. Jean looked at the clock, and in that moment, she said, she knew that something had happened to Dave. She did not simply feel worried that the plane was late. She believed the aircraft had gone down and that her husband was dead. She called the airport and told them that the plane had disappeared at around 9:20, and that Dave had died at 9:30. According to Jean's later account, airport staff confirmed that they had lost the Cessna from radar at approximately 9:20, while it was flying at around 11,000 feet. The aircraft had vanished during the return journey. Searches began, but no wreckage was found. Some people wondered whether the plane had gone down in Crater Lake itself, where the depth of the water could have kept it hidden. Jean, however, remained convinced that Dave was dead, even though there was no body, no wreckage, and no final confirmation of what had happened. For 7 years, the families of Dave Nunn, Jim Pryor, and Matt Perkins had no crash site to visit and no remains to bury. Then, on 5th of July 1982, a hiker found the badly damaged remains of a small aircraft near Huckleberry Campground, around a mile west of the boundary of Crater Lake National Park. Inside the wreckage were 3 skeletons. Identification found in their wallets confirmed that they were Dave, Jim, and Matt. The aircraft had not fallen into the lake after all. It had crashed in the forested country beside the park and remained hidden there for more than 7 years. Jean's certainty on the night of the disappearance later became part of the story. She'd woken at the time the aircraft vanished from radar, felt what she described as a hand touching her leg, and immediately believed that Dave had died. Years later, she wrote a book about the loss and the spiritual journey, called We Fly Away. Whether that moment was a dream, intuition, a physical response to something she could not consciously know, or a final connection between husband and wife, Jean did not describe it as an ordinary fear. She said she knew. Crater Lake's darker history is not only made up of accidents, weather and disappearances. In 1952, the park became the setting for a double murder that still sits uneasily in its record. The victims were 2 General Motors executives, Albert Jones and Charles Culhane. They had travelled into Crater Lake National Park in July of that year, part of the steady flow of visitors drawn to the lake's beauty, its keen air, and its strange blue water. To most people arriving there, the park would have looked like a place far removed from violence. It was remote, scenic, and protected. A place people entered for rest and wonder rather than fear. But on 19th of July 1952, Jones and Culhane were found dead. The killings were described as execution style. Both men had been shot, and the case immediately became something more than a tragic accident in a national park. The investigation drew in law enforcement, including the FBI, but the case did not produce the kind of clean ending that people expect from a murder inquiry. No one was convicted. The deaths of Albert and Charles remained officially unresolved, leaving Crater Lake with another story in which the place seemed to hold on to its secrets. The lake itself is clear, but the stories around it are not. For visitors, national parks often feel like places outside ordinary life. People come to them expecting space, scenery, and something close to peace. But that distance from ordinary life can cut both ways. The same remoteness that makes a place feel pure and untouched can also make it vulnerable. Roads become isolated. Weather changes quickly. Help can be far away. A person can disappear into trees, snow, rock, or water, and the landscape may not give them back for a very long time. For all of the death and disappearance around Crater Lake, one of its strangest legends is not about a ghost or a person, it's about a tree. For more than a century, a large upright log has drifted across Crater Lake. It's known as the Old Man of the Lake, and it's one of those real natural oddities that sounds as though it should belong to folklore. The log is a mountain hemlock, roughly 30 feet long, with only a few feet visible above the surface. The rest of it hangs below the water, keeping it balanced vertically as it moves slowly around the lake. That's what makes it so strange. It does not float flat like ordinary driftwood. It stands. From a distance, it can look like a small figure moving over the water, a dark shape crossing the blue surface with no obvious force pushing it. It's been observed since the late 19th century, and early surveys of the lake already noted its presence. Over the years, people realised that the old man did not stay in one place. It travelled around the lake, drifting silently from one area to another, sometimes covering surprising distances. People have watched it, mapped it, and photographed it. Park workers have tracked its movement. Visitors have looked for it from the rim and from boats. It's become part of the lake's identity, not frightening exactly, but uncanny. It's not alive, yet it moves. It has no face, yet it's called the Old Man. It's only a log, yet people speak about it, almost as though it belongs to the lake in a personal way. There's even a story that when scientists once tried to secure the Old Man in place during underwater explorations of the lake, the weather changed badly enough that some people connected the two events. And in a place already surrounded by sacred tradition and unsettling history, even a floating tree can begin to feel like something that should not be interfered with. There are also stories of lights and fires appearing on Wizard Island after dark. Wizard Island rises from the western side of Crater Lake, a volcanic cone formed after the collapse of Mount Mazama. During the day, visitors can reach it by boat, but overnight camping is not permitted. Even so, park rangers and visitors have occasionally reported seeing what appears to be campfires burning there at night. From the rim or from across the water, the lights look like ordinary fires. In some accounts, figures can be seen gathered around them. One story involves a ranger who saw what appeared to be a group of around 10 people standing beside a roaring fire. The gathering was far from any permitted camping area, and the ranger believed the people were camping illegally. But when the ranger went to investigate, they found no one. There was no fire. There was no smoke hanging in the air, no warm ashes, and no scorched earth where the flames had appeared to be. Similar reports have been made at other times. Fires are seen on Wizard Island, but when the island is searched, nothing is found to show that anyone had been there. The lights have sometimes been described as ghostly campfires, and they fit naturally in the older stories surrounding Crater Lake. Wizard Island sits above the place, associated in Klamath tradition with spiritual conflict and the world beneath. Crater Lake Lodge has gathered its own ghost stories as well. Guests and employees have spoken of footsteps moving through corridors late at night, particularly on the upper floors when no one can be found nearby. Doors are said to open or close without explanation, and some visitors have described cold areas appearing suddenly inside rooms, even during warmer weather. There are also reports of whispers, keys jangling, and dark shapes moving through the Great Hall, after it has emptied for the night. Some modern versions of the haunting describe the figure of a little girl wandering the corridors. Another story places the spirit of a former Chinese labourer near the lift. The origins of those particular stories are difficult to trace, but they have become part of the lodge folklore. The lodge stands close to the rim, with a lake just beyond it. At night, when the windows reflect the interior and the landscape outside disappears into darkness, even ordinary sounds can become difficult to place. But for some guests, what they heard did not feel like an old building settling. It felt like someone walking the halls. Not every strange experience around Crater Lake involves a visible figure. Some visitors describe the place as beautiful, but deeply uncomfortable. They speak of feeling watched, of wanting to leave sooner than expected, or of sensing something in the forest around them, even when there's no one nearby. In one account, campers arrived late at an almost empty site near Crater Lake. It was around 1 a.m, close to the end of the season, and the campground was dark and silent. As they put up their tent, both felt as though something was watching them from just beyond the reach of their lights. They didn't see a person or an animal. There was no clear sound to explain it. But the feeling stayed with them throughout the night, that they were not alone, and that whatever was nearby was remaining just out of sight. Other visitors have described a similar reaction at the lake itself. They recognised the beauty of the place, but felt uneasy looking into it, sometimes saying the water seemed too still, too deep, or somehow unwelcoming. People arrive expecting beauty. Some leave remembering the feeling that something had noticed them. Crater Lake holds the memory of fire, water, grief, and silence. It holds stories of people who vanished into weather, of wreckage hidden for years, of a double murder without a clean ending, and of a floating old tree that moves across the water. And maybe that's why the lake feels watched. Not because something is necessarily watching from the trees, or from the rim, or from beneath the water, but because the place itself seems to carry a memory. Everything that has happened there becomes a part of its atmosphere. The sacred story, the eruption, the crashes, the deaths, the rumours, the old man. All of it gathers into the same blue basin. It feels haunted, because the place has never been empty. There are stories of unexplained lights over the water, a figure seen where no one should be, and of Lalo's spirit still remaining beneath the lake, capable of stirring storms when disturbed. All of these things have helped create Crater Lake's reputation as a place where something old and unsettled still lingers. One of those places that has so much going on, and you can sense the energy from across the pond.
Yeah.
Because, it's one of those places, like we've got them here, where they have so much energy. I wonder if it's like ley lines or whatever. I don't know much about ley lines. I just know the general outline. And I do wonder if it's one of those sort of places that has that sort of real concentration of mystical energy, like Mount Shasta. I can't remember.
Yeah, whatever it is.
Brain dead I am. And interesting that the wife knew. I think there is some connection like that you can sense things going on. Don't think it happens all the time between everybody, like you hear instances of mother and their child knowing something's happened,
Yeah.
And I just find it really interesting.
Very interesting. Well, that's the end of this episode. Hope you enjoyed, and we'll catch up with you again soon.
We will indeed. We will catch you again on Thursday for the Reddit and listener story episode. Just a quick reminder as well, from next week, from the 27th, we're swapping it over to 14 days of summer beer. So the next main episode will be back in a couple of weeks. Take care, everyone.
Goodbye.
Whoever said fork in the road must have been hungry for the Sorrento and Sorrento Turbo Hybrid. Their 3-row seating and 10-year, 100,000-mile limited powertrain warranty. With a capable Sorrento and Sorrento Turbo Hybrid, every way forward is the right way. Visit your local Kia dealer today. Kia, movement that inspires.
Call 800-333-4KIA for details. Drive safely. See retailer for warranty details.
The stories told on the Whispering Woods are inspired by historical records, witness reports, and local folklore. While every effort is made to research and represent events accurately, some details, names, and locations may differ from official accounts or have been changed out of respect for those involved. These episodes are created for storytelling and entertainment purposes and should not be considered definitive fact or investigative journalism.